All right, got the live stream on here. Should make it a little hopefully. Give a couple minutes here for some people to join up. While they do, I need to move this. It's a dial indicator I was doing some tests with this morning. Get that out of the way. What do I need here? Let a couple people join before I really get started here. So I'm just organizing some parts for the upgrade now, getting everything gathered up, and then I'll talk about what I'm upgrading and why I'm doing it. Actually, where did I put the upgrade parts? If you haven't followed me before, I lose things constantly, so don't be surprised by that. Yeah, grab those parts. Okay, now I actually have the parts I'm going to be upgrading, so that'll help. Well, we got at least one person here. So here's what I'm going to be upgrading. Matt at 713 Maker shipped me one of the new ultra lightweight Y plates. So a lot of material removed. It also has we switched these to threaded bolts on the ears for those. So I need to install that, and I also have the prototype of the BMG lightweight mount I'll be installing. So I got those two, and I'm going to install the E3D/fill extruder. If you can see those, if the camera focuses, idlers and pulleys for this, which are 2GT. I posted in the RailCore Facebook group about the whole GT2 versus 2GT debacle. A little more on that if people are watching that have looked at these. One of the interesting things about them, if you do upgrade your RailCore to them, just put those side by side there, you can see E3D ones are about 1 millimeter taller. This is the E3D than the standard clones that you find on like Amazon or Chinese shops or whatever. So the taller idlers do cause a couple little headaches with belt alignment, and I have gone through that on my second RailCore, and so we'll be showing how to align those belts on my primary RailCore. Kind of waiting to see if a couple more people join before I get started here, but yeah. If you do join, say hi so I know you're there. The YouTube counter for who's in the channel really doesn't update terribly well. I'm going to be mad at myself because I don't know where I put my ratchet. Before I get started, a couple notes if you have built a RailCore that I've noticed on my newer one. Two things. One, after a couple days of printing, it took maybe 4 days on my new one, the belts will go out of tension. So you can hear this nice low bass note on this one. It's been printing for a long time. On my newer one, the belt is completely slack. The belt stretch. So you just tighten those after a couple days, retension them. And the second thing is on your duet, just double check your hot end connections, your power connections, your bed connections, anything that has high current flow going through it on your duet. Just hold that connector solid and tweak it down. The bolts do loosen up a little bit over time as current goes through them at first. Oh, you know what? I didn't install brass inserts into my belt retainer. So I need to go grab a soldering iron and get that heating up. I'll be right back. Got my trusty old soldering iron here. And I'll get that warming up and do that first, actually. And hopefully we'll get some people joining here in the channel. See 2 people. If you're here, go ahead and say hi. Because YouTube does not tell me who's watching. Let's see. And I'm going to need... Of course, I don't have my brass fittings either. This is a disaster of a start. I'll go grab those. As I said at the very start, I lose things constantly. Just how I roll. I cannot find my brass heat set inserts, which will cut this very short. I can't. Could install some of the other stuff, but the white plate's kind of key to it, so I got to find those. I have no idea how I lost them. No, the other RailCore is sitting quiet. I don't know what the background noise would be. What you're watching is me being unable to find my 3mm brass inserts, which is going to cause a problem. Hello, Maker's Dimension. Thanks for joining. Here, I'll give a quick tour of my printer room here. So here's my first RailCore in all its glory. And there's my shelf with some prints on it. There's my Delta, which is where I started. And then over here, I have my second RailCore and the laptop for the live stream. Up above, I have a parts shelf. Up above that, I have some more prints. And it's a pretty small room, tools and miscellaneous. Airbrushing station, that cabinet's full of games for gaming. More games on top because I have too many games. There's me. More painting stuff for mini painting. More tools. Tabletop gaming accessories, and back to the Delta. So that's the room I print in. Quick little tour there. I really need to find these brass inserts. Where they're supposed to be is in one of those bins on the shelf, and did not put them back there. I have this pile of M5 hardware, and they're usually in here, if not in that bin, and they are not. So this is kind of the story of my life, is losing everything, and I should have found these before I started the live stream. Oh, there they are. They were just in the wrong. Got them. Cool. So soldering iron should be nice and hot for sinking these in. And I'll start with that. And what I'm sinking these into is the new belt retainer for the aluminum Y plate. So that'll bolt onto the back of here like this. I know my camera's not that great. I apologize. Forgot to pull a support out of this print. If you install one of these Y plates, which I know a number of people are, they get 5 brass inserts. The first one I'm going to do is the one people tend to miss, and it goes right here in this center hole on the back to give it one extra point to attach to. So I just put it on there and sink it right in. And once that's sunk in some, press it against something solid. I may be able to get a bolt in that filled with plastic. Awesome. Planned ahead, I would have noticed that these weren't installed and would have done them ahead of time. By the way, there will be some background noise. Use a putty knife here to sink that the rest of the way. My wife has a couple friends over, so that's what that is. Heat that back up a little bit and make sure it's nice and flush in there before I move on. So who else we got in the channel? Anybody yet or in the live stream? Usually we get a few more people, so hopefully some people join. And feel free to ask questions while I'm doing this, because it's a bit of a chore to upgrade, so it'll take a little while. That's 3. So Maker's Dimension, I don't know if I know you. I think I've seen you on Twitter, maybe? Very cool. You got a kit. Kit builds seem to be going very well. A couple little growing pains here and there, but the more that go out, the more sorted out they'll be. So is that a YouTube channel that we should be subscribing to? If so, feel free to post the link here or on our Facebook group. Especially if you'll be talking about or live streaming anything with the RailCore, it's always welcome. Okay, so I got all my brass inserts in. We'll let that cool. Shut off the soldering iron and move it so I don't burn myself on it. Get that out of the way. Awesome. Good to hear. Okay, so I'm ready to start the actual upgrade. Got my little secret tin of Allen. I have so many Allen wrenches. That's half of them maybe. So all of the upgrades I'm doing today require the same kind of task, which is why I saved them all for one time. Start with loosening up my stepper motors here, get the tension off the belts. And if you didn't see it, I posted the story of the RailCore in the Facebook group today. I think people were enjoying reading that. And once again, the parts I'm installing today in my upgrade here are the BMG lightweight mount from 713 Maker. I'll be installing a lighter weight Y plate to replace the prototype one I have on there now, and the E3D 2GT idlers and pulleys, which aren't quite ideal but should work fine. So I have to pull pretty much all of this apart to do this. Start by clipping my cable bundle here. Removing my BMG. I get asked a lot if the BMG is worth it over the Titan. In my experience, the number one thing I like about it, I do think it's a better built extruder first. Just a little higher quality, and for the price difference on fill extruder, it's 100% worth it. But the other thing that I really like about it is it's much easier to put on and take off than the Titan. And I work on my printer a lot, so that's an important thing too. It pulls off that quick, it goes on just as quick. So that's off. I will say the exact same thing about this hot end mount from Mandala. It's identical to the printed one. Wade, if you're listening, I would like to see a lighter weight version of it, but that's okay. This thing is rock solid, and what I like about it is it's very quick to pull apart and pop the hot end out. So much easier to work on than the printed one. So I have that off. I'll pull the BMG mount off, and I basically have to disassemble the entire Y plate here. Yeah, we've heard that a few times where people wanted a Core XY with linear rails and side panels, either some way to enclose it or keep the steppers out of the build volume if possible. A lot of the same design goals seem to be pretty common, and so it's a good fit for a lot of people. It's worked out very well. Like I said, if you haven't seen the post, I posted the history of the RailCore and where it started, including I found the very first messages between Steve and I where I said, "Hey, Steve, design me a Core XY like this." And then I found the turning point where it went from design a printer for Tony to we're both going to build one, and even the point where we decided, okay, we're going to publish this thing. So I'm just taking all the components off of my Y plate here and stop. And I'm going to see how much I can get away with not stripping each of these things down. I'm going to try and leave it all wired and just unbolt it, rebolt it. We'll see if that works out. The other thing that's funny about that video with Joel, so I spent all weekend talking about the printer and being on my feet at Murph, which was exhausting. And if you've never been to Murph, you know, we're there at 8 in the morning, 8:30, and we don't leave until midnight or later. And so I was exhausted, and it was Sunday morning after the full weekend of Murph, and I was a zombie. And Sean Connolly came over and said, hey, so you've been here I was right next to Joel all weekend, and he came over and said, so Joel noticed your printer. A couple other people pointed it out to him as well, and he'd like to do a video. So it's going to be over in a few minutes, and here we go. And I was a zombie for that video. And it wasn't until after it was published that I watched it and realized neither Joel nor I ever said the words RailCore 2. We never said the name of the printer. I was just that tired. So that was kind of funny. So the reason for the delay on the Y plate, I'm going to move the camera down here and show you. The reason that there was a delay is because of, the camera will focus on it, this bolt going through the plate. You can see the belt is in the way of the bolt head, and it made it impossible to install and tension the belts. Or not quite impossible, obviously I managed it, but it was not an easy process. So Brian Peterson in the Facebook group came up with a rather simple method of using flathead bolts to solve that problem. Yeah, Murph is I've been to a number of maker fairs now. Murph is quite different than a maker fair. At a maker fair, you set up your table with a product, and people walk around and look at your product or what you're selling or your project, whatever it is. And it's more the public coming and learning about your thing, whatever it is you make, which is cool and a lot of fun, and it's a great outreach platform. And there is a little bit of that at Murph. More so at Murph, it is a collection of people who love 3D printing. And it's everybody from, you know, people like Joel and Tom and all the people we know from YouTube, all the See Me CNC guys and Matter hackers, and, you know, just tons of printer companies show up, obviously. But also all kinds of makers there with their own printers they've customized and worked on and changed and built themselves. And it's just a great time to sit and talk to all kinds of people about their own projects and what they've come up with. And the exchange of knowledge at Murph is amazing. Absolutely go to it if you can. So, gotta pull the belt off here. I have most of this Y plate disassembled. As more people get these Y plates built, if anybody's watching that has the Y plates, I'd love to see modified fan mount designs for it. I do think layer cooling is probably still the biggest weakness of the RailCore. I've been happy with the angled mount on this, but I think it could be improved. So here's me not listening to my own point. I got to pull this bolt out before I can pull out the other bolt. Looks like we have a couple more people listening in on the live stream. Okay, so that bolt's out. Now I can take the other bolt out. Oh, Steve, the noise you probably heard in the background is our washing machine. There we go. So I have those two bolts out. Now I can pull the top belt out, which is definitely a tight fit, but not horrible. And I'm going to sit this one aside first as the top bolt. Not sure they're different lengths, but just in case, keep those apart. And I have the same problem here. I have to take the M3 bolt out before I can take the button head bolt out before I can take the other one. It's really a pain. Horrible design. Hey, Dennis. Yeah, I remember you from the last one. Awesome, you're going to be building one. Those kits are going great. And for those of you building a kit, I recommend building it per the instructions first, and then after you do, customize it. That's the point of these. They're easy to work on. They're easy to modify. I obviously have mine apart constantly, more than I even mention. They're just easy and fun to work on. If you look on mine, I do have the halo on. That was the last live stream I did. 300ZL halo will be coming out at some point. I just have to modify the attachment channels so they look correct on a 300ZL. Currently, they don't. And I need to come up with a pattern for that. The boat looks correct and is still nice and solid. Once I do that, then the 300ZL halo will be available. Not a required upgrade. I did not see any print quality changes, but it does look cool. And probably does make my build a little more solid. That's good to know on the 1, 2, 3 block for the D-bot, and I may do a one-off video just showing that process, because it really does help square up the y-axis on these, and should work well for any Core XY. Speaking of any Core XY, part of why I'm doing all these upgrades today is the long-awaited E3D tool changer is about 20 miles from me right now, sitting in FedEx's holding area in South Bend, Indiana, and should be here, if not today, on Monday. Yeah, earlier I gave a tour of the room. I did not mention, here I'll pan over real quick with the camera, don't get motion sick. You can see my Palette Plus in its usual position up there on top of a shelf. That's kind of where it was. I've heard the Palette 2 is a big upgrade, but they have to burn in for quite a while, and I need to see a lot of positive long-term, not short-term, long-term reviews of those before I would recommend them. The tool changer, while it's not the same idea, obviously, is similar enough to draw some parallels and can be used for a lot of the same things. And I think once it's dialed in and working, there are some definite challenges with the tool changer. It'll be better, and we fully intend to port that to the RailCore. That's why I'm doing one. I'm Goshen, David, so very close. Nope, the tool changer is currently in beta. That's why I'm in the beta and Sanjay knows it, is I'm in the beta to port the tool changer to the RailCore. Yep, I'm one of the 31st beta testers of it. With the sole intent, and like I said, Sanjay knows it, of how can we adapt the E3D tool changer to the RailCore and make it work. I have some ideas based on the images I've seen of it, but it will take some modification. It's not a drop-in. We'll probably lose a little Z height when we install it. Okay, so to recap, here's the first thing I'm changing. I just pulled. This was the prototype Y plate. It's a 1/4 inch thick aluminum plate. A lot of holes in it for Y carriage. These here 4 holes on the wings are just pass-through holes. This is the replacement Y carriage, same dimensions, but you can see most of the material is removed. It's still 1/4 inch thick, but most of the material is removed. There's enough there to keep it solid, and these 4 holes are now tapped. It weighs less than half of this one. It is insane how much weight Matt took out of this Y carriage, and it's still plenty strong. And thankfully, with those holes being tapped like they are, and that minor change, much simpler to install. So that's the first thing I'm going to bolt on here. So I've reached that midpoint where I'm done taking stuff off. I'm now installing my upgrades. Yeah, I really had a good time talking to Sanjay the last couple of Rep Fests, Murphs, and Greg this last one, as well as Gabe. If you guys don't know who Gabe is, he's actually from the US but works for E3D, and is doing some software dev for them, I believe. Really cool guy. So yeah, the E3D guys have been great to talk to and very helpful. How many bolts did I lose in the process of taking this apart? Thankfully, I have lots of it. M3 hardware. And if you missed it, my wife does have some friends over, so there is some background noise. That's all that is. Okay, so the Y plate just bolts on with 4 M3 bolts. probably used like 6mm bolts, I guess. I didn't really pay attention. Tighten that up. That's nice and solid. Like I said, for how light that thing is, it's amazing how solid it is. This will be interesting. So let me grab. Got a M3 tap here, and what I tend to do whenever I sink a brass insert in is run an M3 tap through it. That one is not terribly straight. Gonna straighten that out real quick. Oops. There went an Allen wrench. One of these M3 bolts is not, or threaded inserts I did not get in terribly straight, so I'll straighten that out real quick. But like I was saying, I take an M3 tap, make sure not to cross thread it, obviously, and just run it through those brass inserts. And that cleans the thread. It helps a lot. So the software isn't terribly bad in some aspects. Duet has great scripting ability for tool changing. So, move over, drop off a tool, pick up a tool, spin the servo to do that. That part's trivial. I think, Duet can do tool offsets. So that capability is there. I'm not sure, based on E3D's comments, how much they have automated that process of the offsets, both in Z and in XY, versus manually having to figure them out in some way. And I think that's where the biggest questions will be. I think that's where the beta 30 are going to have the most feedback, and trying to automate those. It's easy to think of, I need to line these tools up in Z to get the Z height right, but the XY alignment of, even with just printing, picture your hot ends, if they don't line up perfectly in XY, you're going to have a bad day, and it needs to be repeatable every time you pick it up. And I don't know how they deal with that if the holder doesn't line them up perfectly every time. Or I shouldn't say every time. It should align them the same each time you pick up the same tool. But two tools in the same, if I take one hot end out and put in a different one, how closely do they line up XY? I think is an interesting question. And I don't know how they dealt with it. Okay, got my hot end going here, or my soldering iron. I'm just straightening out this one brass insert just a little bit. It was crooked. So where did I put the tap now? Yeah, so they are looking at tools other than just hot ends. Some folks are talking putting lasers on them. Not sure what all people will put on. Some people were talking about cutting heads. I don't see putting an end mill on a RailCore ever, but I guess. By the way, if you do install this lightweight one, if you look, one side of your belt retainer is thinner, one side is thicker. The thinner side goes down. if you install it the other way, you will have a more difficult time lining up your belts. So I think the bolts I need are these. Yeah, it's entirely possible my tool changer could arrive during this live stream. Oh, I do have a little bit more disassembly to do because I got to take all my idlers off. The particular bolts I got are actually Phillips M3 flathead bolts. Not because I care for Phillips bolts, but because they were available locally. Perfect. So that's cool to validate. So that does clear, sits nice and flush, clears the way for the belt retainers to go in and solves that problem exactly how it should. There's two. That one is binding for some reason. Hopefully I'm not cross-threading that. That would be bad. Back that out and double check I didn't cross-thread it. Doesn't look like I did. Bolt's clean. That time it went on fine. Maybe. I think the issue of the bolt is threading into the carbon fiber PETG, and it's not wanting to spin all the way in. Others are all going in fine. I'm gonna break something here soon. Just knock my hot end down. I have not played with the Mosquito. Nate Walk, who is in our Facebook group, has. He had one of the very, very early ones. He had some problems with PLA. It would jam on PLA even with no retraction. And so that scared a couple of us off of them. I have heard reports that you can now use 0.4 millimeter retraction with PLA and not have problems. But I have not tried one myself. Let's see here. There's Nate. Yeah, I've heard that too. Man, I'm not sure what's going on with this last bolt here. I'm running an M3 bolt through from the other side. Apparently they do just let anybody in here, Steve. It's crazy. Oh wait, I'm the one who controls who comes in. Yes, I let anybody in here. That's all the way through. I know this is some thrilling live streaming here, but I want that bolt to sit right. Okay, let's find a brand new M3 flathead bolt. Could have been a problem with the other bolt. These are real cheap from Menards. Okay. I think it was the other bolt because that one went right in. And we'll snug all those up. Okay, now if you do want to use this center bolt in the top, just warning for those of you who bought one, you need a 5 millimeter, no taller, M3 bolt. I may have gotten too much plastic in there for that. Yep, I'm going to skip that one. Okay, so that's the Y plate. Now for the one I think Nate is here to see. Got the BMG mount. So this is the lightweight. I think it's like 11.5 grams or something insane. BMG hot end mount. Matt was joking, making it lighter. And that 11.5 grams includes the 2 bolts to hold it together. Yeah, the mosquito guys did say, you know, that hot end is not geared towards PLA. That was, you know, it's obviously designed for high temperature materials. Yeah, we all print PLA, and no error on my side. We all print PLA and would consider that a must, but for their design goals, their focus was on the high temp plastics, and I don't think they really tested PLA much. Of course, we all want a hot end that can print anything. And I understand they've made some changes to fix that. But that's why that initial PLA problem was out there. What error are you talking about, Steve? So when you install the BMG mount, I've loosely bolted the two together, but you want to install the 4 bolts to hold it to the Y plate and tighten those down before you tighten up the 2 holding the halves together. And 1 more bolt. I have no idea what length of bolts I'm using because I'm literally recycling them from a pile of spare bolts on my desk. We got 9 people watching. That's pretty good for me. Okay, so there's those 4 bolts in. So once those 4 are in, then use the provided 2 bolts to attach the 2 halves together. There was a slight revision between these prototype Y plate or BMG mounts I got and the final version that's going to be shipping. So there was a little bit of a delay for the CAD rework to fix an offset issue that was in the design of the plastic part. Actually, it wasn't quite lined up right, and there was just enough play in the plastic part that it didn't show up quite as noticeably. But in the middle part, it's a lot less forgiving, so it did show up. But these are good enough for me. It'll work. Put my hot end mount back on. So earlier we talked about Joel's video from Murph. I can say that a new video from Joel will be coming out. I can't say when, but soon. And we're really looking forward to that one. So the aluminum BMG mount compared to the printed one. Here's the printed mount. It needed a lot of stabilization, a lot of material to keep it from bending. The aluminum BMG mount weighs half of what the plastic one does, a little less than half actually, which is pretty remarkable for aluminum to be that lightweight compared to a printed part. 713 maker is awesome. And it's stiffer than the plastic part, so it'll actually flex less. You'll get less retraction bounce. I've never seen a print quality issue from retraction bounce, but some people say it does make a difference. This will eliminate it. It's 4 millimeter thick, 6016 aluminum. Plenty stiff, even with its lightweight design. Okay. Get my BL Touch on here. Common question, BL Touch versus IR probe, versus piezo versus inductive. Your Z probe mostly needs to match your bed and your bed surface. If you're using IR probe, like in the kits, you need a nice dark surface for it to bounce off of. I tend to test and swap out build surfaces. Although I've been slacking on it here lately, I have a Geckotech build surface sitting on the shelf unused for months now. But you need to be able to swap, or you need to be able to match your Z probe to your bed. So for me, the BL Touch makes the most sense because it really doesn't matter what bed surface I have. It can probe on it. Where the IR probe, if I have a piece of Boro that fits this, if I put the Boro on, it's not going to work, that kind of thing. So for the aluminum, are you in the US? Yeah, when the BL Touch works well, it's great. I get a less than 0.01 on the repeatability, 0.01 millimeter. So David, if you're in the US, I encourage you to purchase from 713 Maker and Mandala Roseworks and support their efforts with the printer. If you're outside of the US, and if you're inside of the US, we do make some simplified DXFs available. We do not give out the full final designs from 713 Maker. I don't have the new Y plate designed, so I won't be able to link that right away. I need to do a simplified Y plate and then I'll link that. The stepper motor mounts are available in a simplified form. The idler plates are available in a simplified form. The bed is right in the main Fusion 360 document. The X carriages, Mandala actually milled right off of the printed part. So those you could use right off of that. Let's see here. What else is there? Oh, the BMG mount. So this lightweight BMG mount is a good example. I can't give away 713 Maker's work. The entire design was 100% his. It is a derivative of our printed mount, and so we would just point you to the printed mount just like we did him. I know that's technically like not 100% like the GPL works, but it's our way of keeping support for their work and their time. We can't give that away while trying to remain open. So it's kind of a compromise we make. Hopefully that's fair enough. This end stop is all that I have left. And it's going to be a pain in the butt because I can't see what I'm doing. So hopefully that makes sense on the simplified files, and I have a directory I keep those in. I will be adding the Y plate because I designed that. It will be there soon, but like I said, the lightweight BMG mount will not show up there. 713 maker though does ship worldwide for fairly reasonable fees, so that might be an option for you. He shipped to some island in the Pacific. He told me where it was, I forget, but I couldn't believe there was a RailCore builder that far out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I need another bolt. Always double check that your end stop hits your X carriage before anything else does. Before you consider it finalized. Okay, so there's that. Put my hot end back in place. Maybe. It's catching. This aluminum hot end mount is so much easier to bolt on than the printed one. Okay, there's that. And the way I do the BMG now, if I can stop from dropping things, take the bolts out ahead of time. I pop that on there, put that half on, and then it just pops back together. That is why I like the BMG better than the Titan. More than anything else, that's why. Oops. Helps to use the right size Allen wrench though. Now, one important comment that I have to make, and I make every time I work on something these days, a lot of the parts I'm putting on today will definitely change with the tool changer. There's no question, there's no way we can keep, obviously the BMG mount will switch to a Bowden. That's just the nature of how E3D implemented their tool changer. So the lightweight BMG mount will not be needed for that. I forgot. So I noticed when I put my other one of these BMG mounts on, and I forgot when I did this one, it's easier to get the bolts through and lined up with the stepper out of the way. It's a very tight tolerance, which is what you want. Then you put the stepper on. Things like the BL Touch may not even be required once we bolt the tool changer stuff on. I fully expect some rather drastic changes to some parts. I will probably spin the Y-axis 180 degrees. Yeah, it's just going to require some changes to the RailCore that will only apply to the tool changer version, which is part of why I have two RailCores. I can do tool changer on one and regular RailCore on the other, and not have to worry about that. So there we go. My Y carriage is rebuilt. I just need to pop the clip back in here. Grab some zip ties. And I have swapped out both the Y plate and the BMG mount while babbling at you guys. In what, an hour? So that's not too bad, considering I think 20 minutes of that was me trying to find my M3 brass inserts. And get the second zip tie through here. There we go. So my Y carriage upgrade is done. But I will keep the, I have no idea where that came from. I'll keep the live stream going here. I'm going to now swap my idlers and pulleys for the E3D idlers and pulleys. You're welcome to stick around while I do that. So I did this on, that is right, Steve, it's not done until it prints, and I'll keep live streaming as long as you guys want to keep watching. Or even if you don't, I'll probably keep going. I can talk to myself all day long. So I installed these E3D components on my second RailCore, and they're not ideal by any means, but they will work. They're taller, and specifically on the 20 millimeter shoulder bolts, they don't fit quite how I would prefer them to. So what I did is I took one E3D idler, and what you'll find, if you put two on, they're exactly 10 millimeters tall. Not a problem for these outside ones. What I'll do, I'll put 1/4 of a millimeter shim on that. Those are the shims included in the kit, or the BOM. You can buy them on Amazon. I will put a standard idler, not an E3D. I actually like the look of the smooth ones for that. So I'll grab a smooth idler here. There's grease all over these things. Put a standard smooth idler there, make sure those both turn nicely, which they do. And then under that smooth idler, I will put an M5 washer. And that fills that stack exactly on this one. That's the full stack. So I will turn that over and just thread that back down. If you've heard me complain about the Amazon / typical random Chinese idlers at all, you'll note they are not standard heights. So each time you do this, you know, it might be one M5 idler for me, or one M5 washer for me on this one. The next one might be two, or might be one M5 and one shim underneath. But there's very little play vertically on this, just a slight bit, and they spin smooth. So that's that. So now we'll pull the outside one. Now here's where it gets kind of funny. If you bought the bill of materials 10mm shoulder bolt and use the E3D brand or resold idler, it will fill that entire shoulder bolt. I have 12mm shoulder bolts. So what I can do is put an M5 washer on, provided I can find an M5 washer. I will follow that with a shim, because you never want a washer directly against a shim. You'll have a bad day. Or against an idler. You always want a shim there. And then underneath that, I will put two shims. So it's 5mm washer, shim, idler, two shims. And then a trick Steve told me about is a little dab of grease to hold those shims on. So I can flip it upside down and they don't just fall off. Pull the rest of my old previous stack out of the way. And all that grease off my fingers first. There we go. And I just double checked that that spins. No feeling of the bearings clicking or binding or anything like that. And that's tightened all the way down. Move on to the back one. Again, if you have the kit shoulder bolts or the bill of material shoulder bolts, these are going to line up a little differently than mine, so the numbers I'm giving here for shims and stuff won't apply. There's literally 0 shims you can fit on a 10mm shoulder bolt with the E3D 2GT idlers. So same deal here. One M5 washer, one shim. One 2GT, two 4mm shims. And the nice part is I have found these E3D idlers to be very consistent in height. They are high quality. They might be not be GT2, but they are high quality. So. Yeah, give me just a second. Got some grease on my hand right now. And that's been smooth. Okay, so you're asking about the twist of the Y rail. If I put my finger on my hot end and I hold that Y rail solid, there is zero play there. It's rock solid. What I recommend you do when you build your kit is feel each of your rails. Playing in the space we do with the Zytec and similar branded rails, they're not the ultra premium ones. We're not paying $130, $150 per rail. Some of them will be higher quality than others. Put your very highest quality, the best feeling, smoothest, least play rail on your Y. Put the next two highest quality on your X, and put the remaining three on your. I do recommend putting a little grease in them before you bolt them on. I use Super Lube synthetic grease. But if you make sure your rail is one of your better rails, there should be zero play here. And part of that is we have this rail clamped in from the sides and from the bottom into these aluminum carriers. So it's held in very rigidly. There's no play in that. I have a whole stack of spare rails. I have 9 of them right here. Some of them are a little shorter, and so I'm not sure. Here's one. So as an experiment, I took and bolted one of these rails to the back of this rail and just attached the two together to stabilize that, which, that's a steel bar, so it's pretty solid, bolted to a steel bar. And I used M3 bolts all the way across. It really increased the mass of things. But just checking to see if it changed anything about my prints, and all I did is added ringing because of the extra mass. There was no flex that it removed from the system. It just added mass. That is probably not true if you go bigger than the 300ZL. If you scale it past that, and it's the reason we haven't, you would want to add a spar similar to what E3D did, or some way to further support that Y rail. The experiment with the extra extrusion in the base. So I do have, let me show you here. If your motion sickness, watch out. I do have extra extrusions on that RailCore and on that RailCore, as well as my display sitting there. So I bolted extrusions in both What I have found is it made zero difference in my print quality, which is what this is all about. Haven't seen any change in print quality from that. What I have seen is if I walk up and I push on the base of my printer now, I do not get a Z artifact anymore. If you walk up to a standard built RailCore and you push on the HDPE, it does flex enough you can introduce Z artifacts pretty easily. Not much pressure. Once you put those in, I get no Z artifacts even with a moderate amount of pressure. I mean, I'm not like, standing on it or anything, but okay. So idler, shim, smooth idler covered in grease. Oops, dropped a shim. 5 millimeter. And the last one shim. Now, if you have a linear rail that is not good, which happens, again, we're playing with $35 linear rails. Sometimes they're lower quality than others. You will occasionally find one linear rail allows some twist there. It's just going to happen. If you put one of those on your y-axis, you're going to have more play. That's just how it works. Those are just fine on your z-axis. You won't see any problems with them there. So check your rails and put your best one on your y-axis. Nope, I must have gotten one too many on this one or something, because that is binding. So let's figure out what I did wrong. Either that shim moved. Let's pull that shim out and see how it does. So what happened there, I tightened this down and I tried to turn this top pulley and it did not want to turn, which is obviously binding, and we don't want that. Yeah, there's no play now. So this one did not need that extra shim on the bottom. And is nice and smooth. There's very little play there. So that's just a height difference in the smooth idler that I use between the two cheap smooth idlers. That's what you get. Okay, but those aren't used, so only the toothed ones on these count. So for these, I still have the kit / stock BOM recommended 20 millimeter tall shoulder bolts. Which means if I put my tooth idler on and I find my smooth idler and put it on, and I show you, I don't know if you can see that. I don't think my webcam is good enough. there is no shoulder left. There's no room to even get a single shim between them. That is what it is. So what I'm going to do is put a dab of grease between them. Slide that smooth idler on. Put a dab of grease on the bottom of that smooth idler. And bolt it on. Oops. Got an old shim still sitting there. This might seem like a bad idea to have two pulleys touching each other directly with just some grease between them, but I've been running my second RailCore like this for 2 weeks now, and have seen no ill effects. There's no rubbing sounds. There's no signs it's a problem, so I'm trying it. If I do find it's a problem, I will swap this shoulder bolt out for a 25 millimeter shoulder bolt. But so far, you can see they both spin independently, very smoothly. There's no major friction between them. So it's working for me. Might not be ideal. You might want to go ahead and grab a 25 millimeter shoulder bolt if you're using the 2GT pulleys. Now, if you want quality pulleys and you don't want to mess with the 2GT versus GT2 debacle, I know of a conversation going on between a manufacturer and Gates to get genuine GT2, the we want, pulleys and others made to the common 3D printer specifications directly by Gates. So no third-party questions, no quality questions. It's the real stuff straight from Gates. But it's just in the early conversation right now. It's not close by any means. So if you want that, you need to sit tight and wait for that to play out. Somehow, I know this will shock anybody that knows me very well. Somehow I am short one idler. I do not know a cost on the 300ZL Halo or on the 250ZL Halo. So all pricing is handled directly by 713 Maker on those, and I do not remotely recommend or advise them on how to price their part sets. Completely up to them and their process. Yes, Nate, I know it's entirely shocking. How the heck did I lose this? Put these pulleys back. Do a little quick cleanup here and maybe you'll find it. Every once in a while I hear a shim hit the floor. If anybody's bought those shims, they know that's a bad thing because those are expensive. I'm wiping the grease off of these pulleys before I put them away. Well, they weren't in that stack. Let's see if it's in here somewhere. So every once in a while somebody says, oh, you guys don't test enough or whatever, or they ask how much we do test. This bin is my collection of pulleys from different sources, idlers or other pulleys, including testing like higher tooth count pulleys and different brands. And yeah, I test far more than I always say. You know, lots of test parts. My pulley was not in there. Where is my idler? Shoot. Did it roll under my printer? That might be it. Found it. It rolled all the way under my printer and back against the wall. Thankfully, it didn't fall off the desk. Okay, back to where I was. So I got some grease between them. Okay. Little super lube grease on top of that one. Like I said, I have no idea if this is proper, if I should be doing this. Do it at your own risk, blah, blah, blah. It works for me. I'm referring to the stacking two directly together without anything in between them. And it's wanting to cross thread. There it goes. And I'll go to a 25 millimeter shoulder bolt if I have a problem. And I'll post an update, or I'll say something if I find it's needed. Okay, I think I'm ready to put my belts back on. Okay, so this was my bottom belt. Not that I think it makes a huge difference, but. And what I found is you want the opening facing down. Which is the opposite of how it was before. Let me double check that. Yeah, I have opening down. There we go. Okay, so I got that belt clip in. It's around here. Oh yeah, I gotta swap my pulleys. Oh yeah, this was a fun thing. I got to check with Phyllis Truder, and see if it was just a fluke with mine or if it was intentional. But the Gates pulleys I bought don't have grub screws in them at all. Didn't include them. Which I didn't think was terribly nice, because those are kind of required. But thankfully, I have grub screws.
So I need to squat with my butt instead of my thighs.
I have no idea if you guys can hear the background conversation, but yeah, kind of funny.
So I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to like keep these vertical, and I can't.
Be right back.
No?
Did Rebecca tell you on live stream?
What?
Did Rebecca tell you on live stream? No, you're fine. I just want to make sure you know if you didn't.
Okay, so no hazard?
No, you're fine. Sorry about that. Okay. Hey, Rover. Okay. So there's that. Pull this one, and I'm not really worrying about the height of these yet. I'm just installing them. The other thing, if you're not aware, you absolutely want to lock tire steppers or they will fall out. I'm not doing it yet because I'm going to have to adjust them. I'll do that later, but good enough for now. Close those before I spill them everywhere. Back to my belt. Okay. So this goes around here. Here, around the other bottom one, around that. I'll be 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Like I said, my wife has some company over, so I stepped out. What I'm hoping I can find. One of the favorite tools I have is a little ratchet that is awesome for putting the belts on. Again, no big shocker here, but I can't find it. So Rover, do you have a RailCore, building RailCore? Are you somebody I know? Introduce yourself since you said hi. Yep, and I cannot find that ratchet. I did not think to locate it before I started, and I don't figure you guys want to stare at my RailCore while I find it, so I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. Which is always fun the first time you put them on because I'm cleaning the threads a little bit. Even though I ran a tab through them, I think there's a little bit of plastic stuck in here. Okay, so since nobody's asked any questions lately, my favorite upgrades for the RailCore, from the kit to what I have here. Just choosing a random topic. I do like the metal Z yokes. I'm recommending those as stock for the ZLT, but I do think they're of benefit even to the standard ZL. Those are really nice. The metal Y plate that I just installed on here is lighter and stiffer than the printed plate. You know, David, I have all kinds of organization stuff, and I lose everything anyway. I actually have a drawer right here that is supposed to have all those tools, and including that ratchet, and it's not in there. So that didn't help me much. Okay, so that looks good. Bottom belt is on. For some reason, it's twisting right there. Not sure why it looks twisted. It's probably just so much slack in it. Oh, there it goes. Huh. Just had to settle or something. Oh yeah, I love my Stranger Things sign, and it glows in the dark. I just did a pause and print with glow in the dark print on top of some black PLA, and it turned out really cool. Okay, so before I go on, what I check is how my belt lines up. So if I move over here, my belt looks too low. I go over here, my belt looks too, I would say too low, by just a little. So I'll try turning the front one over first. Not sure why that's the opposite of my other printer. Really wish I had that ratchet. You know what? I'm going to leave this the way it is. It's very, very slightly too low. I don't want to bore you guys with moving it. Oh. And I don't know. That looks bad. I think that'll be a problem. Just comparing to my other printer to see. It's definitely lower on this one for some reason. Check for that ratchet again. Oh, there it is. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. It was there, I just didn't see it. Yeah, Brian, so that'll be probably when I'm done with this live stream. I'll just go finish up the 300ZL Halo. It's sitting there in Fusion. It's done. The only thing not fully modeled are, it has 3 slots per side, and obviously it's 50 millimeters longer, and they just don't look right. Paint positioning will be kind of a pain. So I want to add a 4th, I think, but it's a question of, keeping everything rigid while looking right, while providing enough access to bolt things through, and making sure, like, common places people tend to put add-ons aren't covered with one of the spaces in between the slots. And yeah. I did tell Matt that the 250 is good to go. With a minor change I made to it since I put mine on. It's one of the downsides of being the designer for these things. I don't get all the updates all the time. So the change that I had him make was to add a hole to the corners, the 4 corners. You can't see that. Over the corner cube, which will serve 2 purposes. One, if you're building a brand new RailCore and buy the Halo at that time, that will let you use the Halo as a way to line everything up quicker and easier. You'll theoretically have a more square build right from the start. And second, it will allow you to work on it easier later if you needed to adjust those for any reason. So it was one of the changes I decided it needed. I've given him that feedback, and he should be good to go on the 250. So what I did is I just bolted it straight on and pulled it down using the bolts. And when I look, I don't see any gaps. I can't fit a piece of paper under the Halo anyplace between the extrusion and the Halo. And that was the only test I did. So it seemed to pull itself in square. But to be honest, I had already made sure my panels were sitting very flush when I rebuilt this with new panels a while back. So I didn't expect that problem, and I didn't have it. Okay. So back to where I was. I'll run this over now. That is sitting much more level, which is what we want. So that looks good. I'm going to leave this back when it was much closer. And I do not think that is a problem. So let's check the front one. And that's soon opening down facing, but I'm gonna actually check this before I run the whole belt. Yeah, that looks good. Turn around the back, around the pulley, backside to the idler. And again, compared to what I used to have to do with this new Y plate to now, Brian, thank you very much. So much easier. think that's grabbing. Maybe not. There it goes. Oh, that's awesome, Brian. I did not know that. Yeah, I may try the Bird Air again. I had one and I sold it. I had the old 12-volt one for my Delta sitting here, and it was way too loud and I did not like it. I also fried a fan port on my Duet with it, so that made me a little leery of it. All of those issues have been fixed from what I've heard, or improved at least. So I may give it a try again. I actually know the guys that make Bird Air, so over at the Maker Hive. Okay, look at that. I have push that over. That is low. And if I turn that up, that's good. So I just got to flip this one. Awesome. Not sure why it was different between my two RailCores. Probably difference in prints, or who knows. So I'm trying to decide on some prints to do for Murph. I was considering maybe another Serenity, but twice as big. I may do instead, like I said, I have all this gaming tabletop scenery. I have another box, castle parts. I do have some of the printable scenery, if you're familiar with that website. Kickstarter stuff, and am considering maybe doing like a couple houses or buildings or something from their site. So, to be honest, I'm not working on making the belt stuff metal. So, it's not a thing I'm doing. But I can tell you that Matt at 713 Maker wants to see it out of metal. And he is much better at... Why is that not coming out? Screws sticking out slightly. Can't get this belt back out. So Matt may be trying to get clever and work on it. I know he was at least looking at it as part of the Y carriage. And so whatever he came out with, I think would mount to his Y carriage, obviously. But I'm not working on it. So my favorite print, I'll show him here. I use it as a color swatch and for testing things, are spiral cubes. So there's a handful of my spider because I usually have more. But that's, and then a couple of my other prints, which is that big black dragon there. That's a great print, and I love giving those away. I did a handful of, those are pretty amazing. Something, oh, I love these little pyramids too. I've got, you can see there's several of them around. Those pyramids are my favorite print to give away lately. I print a lot of those, and then just give them away to people. Seriously, I can't get this belt up. There it goes.
You did a good job of lining them all up. That would be. I can't even imagine. Like, I just realized that would be hard. Because then they have two screws too.
Just need something to push that back in. Man, that one's being really stubborn now. It went in fine before. There. Okay, so that's on. And the belts line up pretty good now. So, cool. Get that tightened down. There we go. Belts are back on. So if you watched my previous live stream, you may have seen how I tension my belts. I'm going to do that here real quick. I remove my display to do this because of where I mount it. Just gotta find my bar clamps, which my wife may have borrowed, or I may have lost. I think she borrowed them. I'm gonna go check. I'll be right back. two in here. Huh. Well, she doesn't think she borrowed them, so I must have lost them. Which is what I do. So. It should be pretty apparent because they're hard to miss. I just do the tension by feel to square the bar. So I'll show you that in just a second here once I find my bar clamps. Thank you. Okay, got some bar clamps. So what I do is I shake a 1, 2, 3 block and butt it firmly against the right side of my printer and clamp it on like that. But lower so the belt's not hitting it. That would be important. And if you're not familiar with 1, 2, 3 blocks, they're steel blocks, 1 inch by 2 inch by 3 inches. They're great. So again, you want to get that nice and square against the right side of the printer. And then when you push your carriage against it, you will find, and I got to move this out some. Got my second block. This stuff's going to be in the way. Small workspace. I have to fit an E3D tool changer in here. Awesome. You want to make sure it's low enough that your pulleys aren't hitting on it or anything, and firmly up against this right side of the printer. So I don't know if you can see that there. I have the 1, 2, 3 block on each side, the bar clamp. And then from there, you can use tension. So I get a moderate amount of tension, nothing crazy, just a decent amount of tension on the front belt. You don't want to pull super hard on whichever one you do first. You just want to take, you can see right now, there's tons of slack in it. And you want to bring it about halfway back or whatever until the slack is out. And then just tighten that one down. Leave yourself some room for adjustment. You don't want to go the full way back on that. And tighten those down. So it's tight, but and then loosen this up. These bolts are a little too tight to let me tension this. There we go. So then you want to pull your back one, in this case, until that carriage is firm against that. I'm using a screwdriver to hold it, just to make it easier for the video. Gap there, and if I let the tension go, there's a gap between the X carriage and the block, and when I pull on it with the screwdriver, now the gap goes away. So I pull that back, and once that is just touching, lost my grip on the screwdriver. Once it's just touching, then I tighten the bolts. Now I need to straighten out my stepper up a little bit. There. Now, when I check them, I have a nice low bass note. It's not quite where I would want it. So what I'll do now is I'll pull each of the steppers back just a little bit and get that tension higher to get it closer to that 50 hertz recommendation. And it really doesn't take much, and I leave the blocks in place while I do it. And I probably should have posted this a long time ago. I've been doing this forever. And then I laughed when I saw Wade do the exact same thing. So I just pulled that back a little bit to increase the tension on that. When I did that, there's now a slight gap here again. Because whenever you add tension, you're going to pull it out of square. So now I'll loosen up this back one. And the second one, like I said, it can help to use a screwdriver to lever it away from the panel. Do that again. And now you can hear that nice low note or slightly higher pitched note when I did that. Square it up. And again, I'm watching to make sure I'm pulling it just until it hits the 1, 2, 3 block. If you over tension the back one, the front will move away from the 1, 2, 3 block, and you'll be out of square again. It's also important to note. There we go. That was better. Catch it. So I'm out of square now. Pull that back into square. It's not the easiest process, but it's not terrible. The more times you go through it. On the 250, I think it's 50 hertz. On the 300, I think it's closer to 55. Yeah, the wiki is down at the moment. It's being looked at. So I have a nice low, I don't know if you can pick it up on that, but I have a nice low note. That might be a little bit low. I'll try it. And what I watch for, honestly, is if I notice my belts bouncing when I'm printing, I know it's too low of tension, and I just tension them up a little bit. Sure you don't drop the blocks when you release them, because they're heavy, and I've done that. And now I can put this back on. Still need to reprint the back of this. I broke it. Actually coming home from Murph, I was carrying it through the door and I hit the panel due on the door frame and snapped off the holder, and I just super glued it, so it's kind of flimsy. Okay, I'm done upgrading. Something just fell. Don't know what that was. I got crud all over my bed, so I'm gonna go grab I have grease all over my hands too. I need to wash my hands. I'll grab some paper towel and come back and clean off the bed. There is junk all over this print surface. And I can tell you from experience, if you get silicone PTFE based grease on loaf film, it's near impossible to clean off and not destroy the loaf build. Don't do that. And then I use a lens wipe. Clean it off. There. I think I am done with this upgrade. So, what? 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. My wiring could be a little cleaner. Filament monitor. This is the laser filament monitor from Duet, and it's kind of iffy. Oh yeah, I gotta level the belts. I didn't do that yet. I can show you how they are to the tensioning blocks. Yeah. So there are the belts from, hopefully you can see that from the block over to the pulleys. They're nice and parallel there. And that's why those clips over for. I'd like to come up with an easier way of doing that, but that works for now. I have a tail of a belt here. Hopefully you can see those are pretty parallel. Not perfect, but the top one, the belt clip side, this could be probably a little bit higher. Straighten it out some. Which that is flipped upside down. So that was the one I was kind of questioning if it was close enough or not. And then here's the other side, but are very parallel. Not sure if it shows on the camera, but those are almost, hard to get the angle right, but those are very close. So it's not perfect, but it's close enough for me. What I did not do is adjust the height of the pulleys here. So to do that, what I do, sorry for the motion sickness, is I simply look straight across this belt and compare the height of this to this. If I come down here, you can see these are pretty parallel, but this pulley is just a little bit high, and you can see this back belt, this one, peeking out above this front belt. So I know this pulley on this corner here, this pulley is a little high, so I'll lower that. Now the same thing on the back. This is a more extreme example. You can see those belts are not parallel at all. That pulley is way too low, and so looking straight across that belt is horribly out of level. So I'll adjust those real quick here. And again, I'll add Loctite. I'm not going to do it right now. I don't think they'll bounce loose in one crank. Get down where I can see what I'm doing here. So this one is a little low. Actually, and I just push and pull that pulley up and down until these two belts are parallel to each other. And there we go. And I have found that sometimes you have to do this after a little bit of running. Every once in a while, the belt will ride up and down. You know, there's a little play in the pulleys, and it'll kind of settle in, and you'll notice, hey, wait, they're not level, and they were. So that's just kind of one of those things that does happen. And I'll probably fine tune this after the video. I'm not going for perfection here at the moment. I get a little obsessive about that stuff sometimes. So good enough for the video. Let's see here. Actually, so final thing I'll go over is what I do. This came up after the last video. The question was, hey, Keegan, I didn't even see you joined in. I probably should. There shouldn't do that while it's leveling or homing. They're still pretty well intentioned. They sound about the same. I'll probably double check it with 1, 2, 3 blocks just to make sure it's still parallel. But that little bit of adjustment of the pulley probably didn't change anything. Maybe. But I will check it. So what came up after the last one of these is what steps do I take after a change like this, or when I install the Halo, before I start printing again? What are the steps to go through? So what I do, I just home. So I've homed X and Y. I home Z. And then the next thing I'll do is run the bed leveling macro and let it level, just in case I moved any of the lead screws. I don't think I did, but it never hurts to check. I do have the Delrin on, and so far they seem good. I don't know that they're any better or worse than the brass, other than I didn't have to lubricate the rails with anything. I think I heard you can use graphite powder with the Delrin, but I got to double check that. I know you're not supposed to use oil or grease. The brass I use grease with, which tends to make a mess when you handle the rails or the lead screws after. So I leveled the bed. Check here. So I have a little bit of crud on the nozzle here. I'm not going to heat it up. I'm just going to use some side cutters and carefully get that plastic off. And then because my little workspace is the epitome of safety, I keep razor blades around, laying out in the open on shelves, and I just scrape that last little bit of plastic off with a razor blade so I don't have to heat up. I level my Homesy again with a nice clean nozzle. And you want to level first before you do this because having your bed leveled to the BL Touch is important before you set your nozzle offset. Anytime you take your hot end off, adjust the Y carriage, do anything that changes that. Specifically, anything that could change the hot end distance from the BL Touch different distance. You want to double check your Z probe offset. So I've done that. I home Z, it's sitting at 2 millimeters. I click move. I jog down until, yeah, so it grabbed the paper a lot quicker. So there's where it's gripping the paper. And then I run the probe point macro. And I look at where it stopped. It stopped at Z 2.05. It was stopping at Z 2.4 before, so it's pretty far off of where it was. But that's fine. I had the BL Touch off and completely moved things around. I will now repeat the test. So move, should be able to go down. I will run the probe point macro again. And I'm at 2.05 again. So it looks like 2.05 is my new correct Z probe offset. And I'll put that in. And then I always test it. I'd love to say that's perfect every time. But there's always a little bit of what it measures that way with a piece of paper versus what actually prints well. So I'll test it, might baby step up or down, and once I find that baby step difference, I'll apply that to my Z Pro offset in the config G and save it. Yeah, I think this upgrade is done, and I'm ready to print. So let's do that. Bed warming up. What do I have on here to print right now? I'll print a Christmas tree. Why not? Let me grab some filament here. What's up, John? If you guys have any questions, now's a great time because I think the upgrade's all done. Somewhere I have a nice translucent red, ruby red filament. I'm not sure if it's PLA or PET G, but I know I have it. Or I had it and I made it print it. Oh, there it is. It is PLA, perfect. So I have some Atomic Ruby Red Translucent PLA. It's a nice color, and I think it'll be great for one of those Christmas tree prints. I don't think I've used this color in about 1.5 years. Can't remember the last thing I printed in it. Probably Christmas last year. Don't have anything on my shelves in it other than a spiral cube. Okay, we should be up to temperature. Not sure what filament I ran through this last, but apparently it was really dark colored. So we'll purge that. So anybody have any questions at all before I wrap this live stream up? Because I'll be printing very shortly. And I said print. So the BMG mount is the biggest sneak peek I have. That's the one I just put on. And the halo, which you can see. We do have a design for a top. Steve has that. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that, as long as it's not putting a ton of tension, John. You don't want it putting pressure or twisting anything or causing problems that way. Other than that, I don't think there's a real hard and fast rule to how the bundle attaches. So this is my first layer after all of that work. And is why I love the RailCore. Not too flat, not too big. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but that's pretty much a perfect first layer. Something rubbed there. I heard it. That was an odd sound. Let's see if we can find what that was, because that was. Nope, didn't do it again. Maybe I hit something with the camera. Sounded like a belt rubbing or dragging, but it didn't do it again. And it didn't affect the print. I don't know. And see how it goes. So yeah, the biggest things coming out. I know Matt has the BMG and Titan mounts both coming out in the next, literally the next day or two. The wide plate is out now. The 250ZL is just a matter of him figuring out how to ship it, but he has the design. 300ZL Halo, I'll probably wrap that up today and get it over to him. The next really big thing that I'm looking forward to personally is Joel's review of the RailCore will be done soon and should post soon. Yeah, those are the big things I know of coming up. I did start a new job, so I haven't been able to crank out improvements quite as fast as I was. I'm traveling a little more, so it eats up my nights and weekends a little bit. And then 3D tool changer will be here at my house, if not today, Monday, I hope. And I'll get started figuring out how to port the tool changer bits over the next for me. So anyway, that's it. I think that wraps up my everybody for joining. It was a lot of fun. Always more fun to upgrade stuff with people hanging out and chatting. So y'all have a Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you before then.